We welcome to the program Paul Battisti, a Republican candidate for Broome County District Attorney. Welcome.
Good morning, Bob. Thank you very much for having me in here this morning.
And it's good to have you with us. So, you have the distinction of having been the first person to announce your interest in running for the Republican nomination for DA. In fact, you publicly expressed your interest very shortly after Stephen Cornwell made it clear that he was not going to seek a second term. Had you been thinking about this for some time before Steve Cornwell made his decision public, that when he early this month announced his intention not to run for another term as DA and possibly seek some other office?
Bob, it's clearly a decision you don't make overnight. It is something that I had been thinking about for quite some time. Yes.
All right. And we'll talk a bit about your vision for the district attorney's office in a moment. First, though, a little bit about yourself. You grew up in Broome County.
Born and raised right here in Broome County. Love Broome County. Currently 39 years old. Reside in Kirkwood, New York with my wife and 5 children.
And let's talk about the early years. When you were a kid, I don't know, say, 8 years old, 10 years old, were you thinking at that point of, gee, I would love to grow up to be an attorney? I'm looking for a career involving the law.
I've always loved the law from a young age, different activities in school, and always loved politics. When I was 8 or 9, I worked on my first political campaign for that time Assemblyman Richard Miller and that time Sheriff Gino D'Angelo by going door to door. And as I close my eyes, I can still see my bedroom when my family and I lived in Endicott with big posters all over my bedroom. Elect Richard Miller Assembly, elect Gino D'Angelo Sheriff. I've always loved politics.
Why was there a family connection with politics and government?
You know, it's just one of those things that I think doing your civic duty, my parents were always involved in politics, and it was something I was introduced through my uncle, unfortunately, who's now deceased, Maurice Battisti, and it's something I jumped on right away and have always loved it and have always been involved in one way, shape, or form since that time.
At what point did you start to perhaps talk with others who were already attorneys and get some sort of advice or guidance about the best way to go forward and start to study what you needed to know to become a successful attorney? At what point were you having serious conversations about this as a career?
When I was in college, I had an opportunity to start at Broome Community College, now SUNY Broome in Binghamton, and I took some political or pre-law classes there and then had the opportunity to go on to Siena College. And at Siena College, there was a professor, Dr. Leonard Cutler, who was very inspirational in my career, who taught numerous law classes. It was through my experience with Dr. Cutler in the Socratic method that I really came to the conclusion at that time that law is definitely a career I wanted to pursue. I had the opportunity in one summer to do a full internship with him and Howard Cattell, one of the very many great law firms we have here in Binghamton, and that just re-solidified my desire to go on and ultimately become an attorney.
And let's talk about your experience when you got out of law school. How did things go? Were you able to get involved with a firm right away?
When I came out of law school, I had a great experience in San Diego, California. Went out there in 2001 and successfully graduated in 2004. When I was out there, I did internships in the San Diego District Attorney's Office as well as the Public Defender's Office to get an idea of where I wanted to go, and it was clearly the criminal arena. When I came back, I immediately was hired by Ramey Perot, who was an individual who had a very successful practice here for many years, and I stayed there until 2009 when I broke away and started my own practice.
And tell me about that, how things have been over the last decade in private practice in Broome County.
Yeah, over the last decade, I've seen a lot of changes. I've seen a lot of different crimes. I've seen a lot of different addictions, a lot of different issues that we're confronting today at such a large rate weren't necessarily as big as they were roughly 9 years ago when I went out on my own.
You've had the opportunity at times to represent people in high-profile cases, also some well-known names in the community. You've been involved in a number of cases that, over the years, wound up making news headlines.
That's correct.
And tell me about that. I mean, when a case is in the public spotlight. Obviously, the vast majority of cases, even criminal cases, rarely make it into the news. In terms of representing people who either are well known or because of the circumstances what they are accused of makes it for a potentially high-profile case. Do you have to have a different approach in those cases versus serving clients who aren't as well known or perhaps aren't involved in cases that are likely to get any sort of real public attention?
You know, regardless if somebody's a high-powered celebrity or somebody's an individual who knows no one, I really try to do my best, follow my ethical obligation as an attorney, and represent that individual regardless of who they are, regardless where they came from, regardless of their economic status, to the best of my ability.
Talking with Paul Battisti, Republican candidate for Broome County District Attorney. As far as the DA's office, what I know about the DA's office, especially in recent years, is it's very busy. The people involved, whether it's the DA himself or the assistant DAs and all the support staff, they're putting in long hours. They're trying to shepherd an incredible number of cases through the system. Sometimes I understand that it's just become overwhelming. Some people, in fact, they spend a little time working in the DA's office and find the challenges perhaps too much, and then they go back to what they were doing before or go to private practice. Based on where things stand now in 2019, what's your sense about the way the district attorney's office is staffed? Is there, as far as you can tell, sufficient staffing to handle the vast number of cases that need to be moved through the system?
There's definitely a lot that goes on in Broome County. There's no doubt about that. And I would like to try to redirect a lot of the focus of various things that are going on. I think there's a lot of additional areas that we should be focusing on here in Broome County. One is mental health. I think we need to do a lot more with mental health. Bob, probably 20, 30 years ago, the state court system put together specialty courts. And a specialty court is a court that is made up of a multidisciplinary task force that works together to address one specific issue. Currently, we have the drug court. You may be familiar with the drug court.
In fact, we just talked about that earlier in the week. I ran into Judge Palella at City Hall, and he pointed out to me that yesterday there was the graduation, in fact, the largest graduation in the history of the local drug court. 13 people successfully completed drug court and graduated yesterday in a ceremony at the Forum. And so that specialty court, I know there's also a veterans court that exists, but it's true. Mental health court there have been efforts that have been attempted in the past year in Broome County, and they were unsuccessful up to this point.
Yeah, you know, in that drug court graduation, I was there. I think drug court is very important. I volunteered for numerous years as the defense attorney on the drug court program, and I think your website had a great article yesterday talking about those 13 graduates. But we can see how much that court is doing for our community. So you can't even imagine if we can treat individuals in this area with a collaboration, with a team effort. We got to get back to team effort. Team is key. Unity is strength. Division is weakness. If we can do that and focus on mental health, the possibilities are endless.
So that would be one of your priorities to if you become the next district attorney, to try to develop that specialized court to assist people who have mental health issues that might be causing them to get involved repeatedly in the criminal justice system?
Absolutely correct, Bob. In
terms of the changes that Stephen Cornwell has made in the DA's office, he came in after Gerald Mullen had been the district attorney for nearly 3 decades, and one of the cornerstones of Mr. Cornwell's successful campaign in 2015 was that he sensed there was a need to modernize the office. There was a need for perhaps just a slightly different approach, or maybe in some cases dramatic changes in approaches to some things in the DA's office. What is your sense of how the changes that have been implemented by Steve Cornwell, whether they've been as effective as they could be, whether some of the changes or adjustments he's made may not have been necessarily the most appropriate thing? What's your sense over the last 3 or so years since Steve Cornwell took over as DA, the way things are operating in the office?
Bob, we talk about change agents. I'll be the first to tell you, change is a good thing if done appropriately. Currently in our community, we are experiencing something I believe we have not seen. If we have seen it, it's been a long time ago, where we have a fractured relationship between members of law enforcement and the current district attorney's office. That's not good. If we can't work together, if we can't follow a teamwork approach, we can't accomplish the goals that we need to accomplish to make Broome County the safest and best community it can be. So again, I think change is good, but you've got to do it the right way. You've got to give everybody a seat at the table. You can't be concerned about who gets the credit. What you do have to focus on is ensuring the job gets done.
So do you believe you would have the ability to work better with the heads of various law enforcement agencies? We have several in the county, of course, the sheriff's office, state police, as well as several local police agencies. Do you believe you would be better positioned to work cooperatively with those who are heading the local law enforcement agencies than the current district attorney has been able to do?
Bob, I do. And the reason I say that is 2 weeks ago when I formally announced, I was humbled to look out in the audience and see so many members of law enforcement supporting me, whether it was officers, detectives, chiefs of different departments here in Broome County, and Sheriff Dave Harder. I was very humbled. That, to me, speaks volumes. That shows me that I'm the only candidate that can bring everybody back together. I think it's important that we all work together for a common good. We've got to do it. It's my years of working in the community, being a civic activist, being out there, being on boards, whether it's GHS Federal Credit Union, whether it's the Boys and Girls Club, whether it's the Library Foundation, whether it's past president of the Broome County Bar Association, whether it's sitting on the drug court team for numerous years. It's being able to sit down with individuals who bring different backgrounds, diverse backgrounds, different ideologies, and coming together for one common goal. When everybody does a little, nobody has to do a lot. Let's not worry about who's behind the camera, who's in front of the TV. Let's worry about making Broome County the safest it can be, the best it can be, and let's ensure that any individual out there that needs help gets the help they need, and let's ensure that individuals that are harming other ones are held accountable and held accountable appropriately.
We spoke with Michael Korchak on the program a few days ago, and he highlighted his experience as a prosecutor, getting started in the Bronx, then after a few years moving here to Broome County to be closer to his wife's family, and he worked with the DA's office when Jerry Mullen hired him in the 90s. He also spent some time in private practice, and then has been back involved in the DA's office. Of course, he also ran unsuccessfully for district attorney once against Gerald Mullen. Give me a sense of, in terms of what you know about Mike Korchak, how your approach would differ from how Michael Korchak would operate as district attorney.
As far as what Mike Korchak will do, that would require me to speculate, and I won't do that. But what I can tell you is the role of district attorney is much more than just going to court. Our current district attorney, I don't believe, has tried a jury trial since taking office. To me, that speaks volumes. In order to be an effective district attorney, you've got to be well-rounded. Doing the same thing day in and day out doesn't necessarily mean you're good at it. Maintaining the status quo is never a reason to vote for someone. We've got to work together, work with our community partners, reach out to our priceless, invaluable resources we have here in the community, and ensure that you put together a team. That's a big office. You ensure you have the right people in that office to be doing the right thing, and the community working together is how you run a district attorney's office.
If you become district attorney, would you expect to bring in mostly all new assistant DAs? Would you intend to retain some of the current staff, or don't you know at this point how you would proceed starting in January if you're elected district attorney?
Bob, I think we have a lot of great assistant district attorneys, but I take this one day at a time. I take nothing for granted, and I haven't even thought about that at all.
Are you expecting other Republicans to seek the nomination? Anybody besides Michael Korchak at this point?
Nothing surprises me whatsoever. I'm putting my best foot forward and giving it 100% every day up until currently the new primary date of June of this year.
So there's not really that much time when you think about it. We're almost February. Primary day will be here before you know it.
I agree. We're going to start carrying petitions early February. It's going to be cold out there, but we'll make it happen.
Would you be willing to come into the studio, and whether it's only Michael Korchak or if any other Republican candidates emerge, would you be willing to have a live radio debate to talk about the role of the district attorney?
Bob, anything's possible.
So you would agree to come on to the program?
I would invite that.
Okay, we would look forward to that.
Thank you.
And that's part of what we do here. That's our commitment to keep people informed. It's a very important job here in Broome County. District Attorney Paul Battisti, Republican candidate for DA. Thanks for joining us this morning on WNBF.
Thank you for having us.